It'll be fun, all-American night. It turns out Tucker Carlson's next. I checked TV Guide. Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. So if you've been watching the news recently, the one thing you know for certain about the accused gunman in the massacre in Colorado over the weekend is that he was a crazed right-wing anti-trans extremist. This is a man who was radicalized by this show and by the Twitter account Libs of TikTok to hate transgendered people. And that's why this man walked into a bar, a gay bar, with a gun and started murdering people. He did that because he was taught by right-wing media outlets to despise and fear the non-binary community. And that's why this show and Libs of TikTok must be hauled into court and bankrupted for what we've done so that we can never provoke this kind of horrifying violence ever again. That's the real lesson of this mass shooting. So that is what they've been telling you again and again and again on various news channels for the past 3 days. And we're not overstating that, by the way. Here's a selection of it.
It's a campaign being driven by members of Congress and conservative influencers on social media, as well as the right's most favorite TV network, Fox News.
Those incidents at drag events I mentioned a few moments ago, they happened within the context of conservative media personalities fear-mongering against queer folks.
Respected messengers from TV networks saying that these people are wrong and they're trying to damage your children.
We have a long history of the LGBTQ community being victimized, demonized by especially right-wing media and Republicans.
You have anti-LGBTQ rhetoric spewed on the most watched hours on Fox News at a regular clip against the U.S. military, against gay men and women, against gay teachers, against their right to exist.
So Fox News, in its most watched hours, is attacking even the U.S. military and, of course, gay men and women and teachers, too. They're advocating, quote, against their right to exist. In other words, they've been calling for genocide. That would be us. Now, that's a stout claim, but no one has made it more often than NBC News. In particular, its two self-described disinformation reporters, Ben Collins and Brandy Zadrozny. These two are outraged that anyone would dare criticize the genital mutilation of children, or drag shows for fifth graders, or creepy weirdo teachers explaining the mechanics of oral sex to 9-year-olds. Pointing out that any of that is happening is hate, and it gets people killed. Here's a highly emotional Ben Collins of NBC News making that very point yesterday morning.
Am I doing something wrong here? Here are some headlines that I wrote the last 6 months. Fueled by internet's far-right machine, anti-LGBTQ threats shut down trans rights and drag events. Remember, there was a drag event happening in Colorado.
Well, what do we do about public officials at local level, state level, federal level, who try to inject the fear of the very word transgender into school issues?
They get more clicks for it, and they end up on Tucker Carlson. They end up on the highest-rated show on cable news. And last night, by the way, Tucker attacked my colleague, Brandy Zadrozny, who was co-byline on almost all of these stories. Not me. He attacked Brandy, of course. But he attacked Brandy. And he went right back into this idea that some they is trying to groom your kids, trying to sexualize your children, right?
Yeah.
Who's the they, first of all?
Yeah. Yeah.
And second of all of her reporting was right. All of it was right.
Oh, it's all about me, of course, says Ben Collins. But more to the point, how dare anyone criticize the august disinformation reporter and former college librarian, Brandy Zadrozny, because, as Ben Collins pointed out, her reporting was right. Well, since you brought it up, Ben Collins, was her reporting right? Well, not entirely. Do you remember when Brandy Zadrozny told you several hundred times that the accused shooter, Anderson Lee Aldrich, was inspired by hatred for the non-binary community that he learned on this show? Do you remember that? Well, actually, it turns out, we discovered last night, that Anderson Lee Aldrich is, drumroll please, part of the non-binary community. He doesn't hate them, he is one. In a court filing, Aldrich's lawyers wrote this, quote, Anderson Aldrich is non-binary. They use they-them pronouns, and for the purposes of all formal filings will be addressed as Mix Aldrich. Mix Aldrich, that's the shooter, the non-binary shooter. Let that sink in. First, get your chuckling under control and ponder what this means. What it means is that virtually everything that NBC News has told you about this shooting in Colorado is not only wrong, it is the opposite of the truth. It is all a grotesque and filthy lie. It wasn't news reporting. It turns out to have been the most transparent sort of political propaganda. And for once, they have been busted flat out in public trying to sell political propaganda to an unsuspecting public under the guise of news. It's not the first time they've done it. They won't stop doing it. Oh, but they did it a lot in this case. Here's another clip, another instance of Ben Collins trying to once again pass off political slogans as news.
There are 5 dead people in a strip mall because that was the only place they felt safe as gay or trans people in this town in Colorado Springs.
He's emotional telling you that. There are 5 dead people in a strip mall because that was the only place they felt safe as gay or trans people in this town of Colorado Springs. So it turns out it's the town's fault, too, because there are a lot of Christians, everybody knows, in Colorado Springs. So gay people feel terrified there because Christians are dangerous. And all these terrified gay people were huddled together for safety when this Fox News-addled anti-trans bigot walked in and started shooting them for being trans folk. That was Ben Collins' quote, reporting. Well, the only problem is not all the victims were gay. One of them, at least one of them, was at the club with his girlfriend. Oh, details, details. Ben Collins doesn't let details get in the way of an effective political attack. And it would have been an effective political attack had not reality interceded. But he doesn't care. Neither does the White House. Here's the White House telling you that because a non-binary person shut up a gay bar, you can't own a gun.
This attack also comes amidst a rise in violent rhetoric and threats against the LGBTQI+ people across the country. While we don't know yet for certain the motive of this attack, hate has no place in this country, and neither do military-style assault rifles, which is why we will continue to push for an assault weapons ban.
Oh, of course, it makes sense. You following the reasoning? So when the trans community opens fire on itself, we need an assault weapons ban because why? Because you're a hater. Pete Buttigieg, of course, couldn't pass up a moment like this. It's not like Pete Buttigieg wants to talk about how things are going over at the transportation department, which he supposedly runs. Short answer, not well. No, Pete Buttigieg wants to talk about identity. He always wants to talk about identity. And the funny, ironic thing is, until just a few years ago, Buttigieg wouldn't even admit that he was gay. He hid that and then lied about it for reasons he has never been asked to explain. Why not? But whatever. Now he is happy to use his sexual orientation as a cudgel to bash you repeatedly in the face into submission. Quote, here's the latest. If you're a politician or media figure who sets up the LGBTQ community to be hated and feared, not because any of us have ever harmed you, but because you find it useful, then don't you dare act surprised when this kind of violence follows. Don't you dare act surprised. Don't you dare. All right, fair enough, we won't dare. But honestly, we're a little surprised to learn that the anti-trans shooter is himself trans. Were you surprised by that, Pete Buttigieg? Now that you're admitting you're gay after lying about it? Since we're talking about identity? What do you have to say about that? Well, nothing, weirdly. Pete Buttigieg hasn't said anything. Nor has he apologized for attacking other people on false pretenses. Guess who else hasn't apologized? Ben Collins or Brandy Zadrozny. Yesterday, they were accusing us of getting 5 people murdered. Now that the story they were telling has turned out to be a lie, the opposite of what they said it was, they're pretending that nothing has changed at all. Oh, they are liars. Cold-blooded liars. It's amazing to watch. And so is the company they work for. NBC News just ran this article after we know that the shooter was himself trans. They ran this headline with a straight face. Quote, right-wing influencers and media doubled down on anti-LGBTQ rhetoric in the wake of the Colorado shooting. Can you imagine writing that, knowing what we know? They had no problem with it. Then an editor at NBC called Benjamin Goggin added this, quote, if the shooter is non-binary, it doesn't change the fact the right-wing media is continuing to stoke hatred towards LGBTQ people after 5 people were killed at a gay bar. Right. So it's hatred. So if you're against genital mutilation of children or bringing toddlers to drag shows, you're against the LGBTQ community. Well, of course, that's insane. There's nothing anti-gay about that. Most gay people aren't in favor of genital mutilation or bringing toddlers to drag shows. There's nothing wrong with those opinions. They're the right opinions, and all decent people understand that. What is indecent, what is wrong, is lying about a mass shooting, which NBC did. So how are the rest of the media handling this? Well, CNN, for its part, is just denying that the shooter is really non-binary. Couldn't be. It couldn't be. It just couldn't be true. So they've decided to continue misgendering Mix Aldrich. Watch this.
Attorneys for the accused shooter, Anderson Lee Aldrich, say in new court filings tonight that the suspect now identifies as non-binary. In a footnote to a motion asserting legal privileges, the public defenders say, quote, Anderson Aldrich is non-binary. They use they, them pronouns. Are you guys lawyers? I mean, you know, I don't know if I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that's what he's now saying.
It sounds like they're trying to prepare a defense against a hate crimes charge.
Oh, so in this case, if the shooter claims to be non-binary, he's got to be lying about it. It's not real. So we're not going to call the non-binary shooter Mix or observe his pronoun request. In fact, the whole pronoun thing is gone. Biology is back. He was born a man. He's still a man. Oh, it's unbelievable. So what they're doing, of course, is using an actual tragedy, the murder of 5 people, for political reasons. And of course, it's not the first time they have done that. They're happy to use death for political advantage. They did it with George Floyd. They did it with Officer Brian Sicknick. And it's not the most recent anti-gay attack, by the way, that has turned out to be a total lie perpetuated by the media. Just a few days ago, a guy was caught throwing a rock at a gay bar in Hell's Kitchen, New York, on camera. So the media dutifully went out and interviewed the owner, who said, quote, it feels like yet another manifestation of hate against our community. A lot of big social media accounts ran with that story. More hate, more hate. So then, and this is a story that didn't get quite as much coverage, the police arrested the guy who did it. His name is Sean Cullion, and he was upset because of a dispute involving a friend. He didn't target the place because it's a gay bar. In fact, and we're quoting now from the rock thrower, I'm gay myself. I mean, come on. Shouldn't someone apologize? Shouldn't someone admit that they got the facts wrong and slandered half the country on the basis of wrong facts? No, never admit it, never apologize. Keep moving on. Pick another story to beat you over the head with. So Matt Walsh has been following these stories. He has been repeatedly attacked by name by NBC News for his dangerous anti-trans murder-inspiring bigotry. We wanted to see how he's holding up in the face of that. Matt Walsh, great to see you tonight. You were called out repeatedly by name, not just some guy, but Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is responsible for this mass murder. Now that we learned what we learned last night, how do you assess this?
Well, I mean, we're all owed apologies, but I'm not going to. I've seen these people enough to know that I'm not going to sit around holding my breath waiting for the apology. I think it's just a really kind of amazing to watch, especially that clip you played of CNN, where they immediately just deny this person's self-identity. And I think that the point that we want to get across is that if you're on the left, okay, you can't do that. That is not available to you. You're not allowed to do that by your own precedent, by your own philosophy, you know, by the rules that you have set, and we're going to hold you to them. Now, you and I, Tucker, we're allowed to say about this mass shooter who calls himself non-binary, we're allowed to say, that's nonsense. I don't care. Non-binary isn't even a thing. You can't even be that. But on the left, they've made it clear that the only evidence that needs to be provided in order to prove that someone is non-binary is that they say it. And what they've also told us repeatedly is that the idea that somebody would adopt one of these identities, you know, in a self-serving way, like, for example, a convicted male felon who's in prison who all of a sudden discovers his inner female identity, to speculate that maybe he's doing that so he could have access to female inmates in women's prisons. We're told that, you can't speculate that. That's an awful thing to even suggest. So that's them saying that, which means that they're stuck with this. I mean, as far as they're concerned, this person is non-binary. Now, what is he actually? I don't know. I think it's pretty clear he's just a crazy guy. That's what actually happened. And the other point I want to make here is that what we need to realize with the left-wing media is that when there's a mass shooting, if we don't know everything about the person's life, and we haven't seen all of their social media posts within the first 2 hours after the shooting, it almost always means that this is not a right-winger. Like, if it's a right-winger who committed the attack, we're going to know everything about them immediately. But it was very suspicious and conspicuous that up until 2-3 days passed, and we knew almost nothing about this guy. All we had was the speculation from the media, and then this shoe drops telling us that, actually, he identifies as non-binary. So that's not a coincidence. They gave themselves time, right, to get their preferred narrative out before the truth got out.
Well, that's exactly right. And in fact, all of this speculation, all of it wrong, has taken place before we had any real facts about this guy. In fact, I think we just got the first video of the shooter, and I want to put it on the screen now. I haven't even seen this. Here it is.
Could the defendant please state his name? Anderson Aldrich, did you watch the video concerning your constitutional rights in this case?
Yes.
Do you have any questions about those rights?
No.
And not for the first time, I think, watching video of an accused mass shooter, why are we ignoring the potential role of pharmaceuticals in this? I mean, that guy's impaired in some way, and we find that not in all mass shooters, but an awful lot are on some kind of prescribed psychiatric medication, but we're not allowed to talk about that because we take ads from Pfizer or something. Why does no one ever say this?
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes it so unfortunate, to put it mildly, that the left is determined to politicize these things immediately and use it as political ammunition, because what it means is that we can't have any actual needed conversation about why this stuff happens. Like, as you point out, pharmaceuticals. Also, one of the few details we know about this guy is that he comes from a broken home. His mother's has warrants out for her arrest. His father is estranged. He's like a porn star, drug smuggler. I mean, he comes from this tumultuous, totally broken home, which of course doesn't begin to excuse it, but it does. Of course not. It does indicate that when kids are raised in these kinds of environments, it makes it much more likely that they're going to lash out violently. That's a conversation we should really be having about the effects of broken homes and the disintegration of the nuclear family and how that contributes to violence. But we can't talk about any of that because as soon as the left realizes that they can't use it for their political advantage, we don't talk about it anymore, and it just goes away. And that's why this story is going away as far as the media is concerned.
Yeah, Fox News, Second Amendment, Fox News, Second Amendment. I mean, it's very tired. Matt Walsh, let me apologize to you for all the attacks you have taken unfairly on this. Great to see you tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
There was a deadly mass shooting last night in Virginia at a Walmart. Police have now identified the shooter in that case. Fox's Trace Gallagher has that story for us tonight. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker, a witness told police the shooter, who was called the overnight lead, in other words, he was the night manager at that Walmart superstore, that he walked into the break room. He did not say anything, and then he opened fire with a handgun. Now, it's still very unclear if the shooting happened only inside the break room, because of the 7 people who died, 3 were found inside the break room, including the gunman who took his own life. Another victim was found near the front of the store. Some said that person was actually in a shopping cart. And 3 more victims were apparently able to move for a short period of time, and they were taken to Norfolk General Hospital. Listen now to the hospital.
Dramatic video capturing the aftermath of a deadly shooting at a Walmart in Chesapeake, Virginia.
I saw another person's body come out in a shopping cart.
Police say a store manager identified as 31-year-old Andre Bing opened fire in the break room Tuesday night, striking co-workers before turning the gun on himself. The shooting left at least 6 people dead and at least 6 others taken to the hospital with injuries.
As that report said, the shooter has now been identified as 31-year-old Andre Bing, who had only been working at that Walmart for a short time, has no criminal record that we could find, Tucker. There is also no motive and no witnesses reported the shooter saying anything. So investigators, as you might imagine, are now kind of going through the standard procedure of checking the shooter's social media footprint to see if he posted anything online or gave any indication that he was planning to kill people. The shooting began a little after 10 p.m. Tuesday night, just about an hour before the store was set to close. And we should note there were also shoppers inside the Walmart who texted loved ones not knowing if they would make it out alive. In all, 7 people, including the shooter, lost their lives, Tucker.
Absolutely awful. Thank you for that summary. Trish Gallagher. Trish Gallagher is hosting Fox News at Night every weekday at midnight Eastern. Ratings off the chart as people discover what we have known for a long time, which is Trish Gallagher is the best. What the Biden administration has done at the southern border is a tragedy for the country. It's an attack on democracy, but it's also a disaster for dogs. Many dogs have been left behind at the border. There's now a scramble to save them before they die or are put down. We're going to talk to someone who's working on saving them in just a minute. Plus, our border czar Kamala Harris is out and about, not at the border, of course. She's headed overseas to find people who like her. Hasn't found that yet, but she's produced some amazing video. We'll show you in just a moment. What do you say we check in with our border czar, shall we? Who it turns out is nowhere near our border. Instead, Kamala Harris is overseas. Yesterday, she was spotted in a fishing village in the Philippines looking at fish.
Hello. 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 Thank you. Hello, Mom. Hello. Hello, Mom. Hello. Thank you.
That's like a perfect job for her. You know, sometimes it takes until midlife to find the thing that you really were born to do. Staring at fish in a foreign country, hello, hello, perfect for her. But as our border czar inspects fish in the Philippines, we have a very real crisis here. Animal shelters overflowing with dogs that illegal aliens have ditched at the border. And it really is a tragedy. Lori Simons runs the Big Dog Ranch Rescue. She joins us tonight. Lori, thank you so much for calling our attention to this and for doing something about it. So describe quickly, if you would, the nature of the problem.
Thank you, Tucker. Thank you, Tucker, for helping me bring this to light. It's a huge problem. When we got down to Eagle Pass down at the Rio Grande last week and saw hundreds and hundreds of starving and abandoned dogs left to fend for themselves from illegal immigrants that cross the border with their dogs, then they get on buses and just leave them behind. These dogs can't survive on their own, and the National Guard and a friend of mine from Blue Line Moving, who had gone down there to do a border cleanup, had reached out to us, and we were really shocked at just how big the problem was and how much these animals were suffering. And this couldn't come at a worse time, Tucker. Shelters throughout the country are overflowing everywhere. Owner surrenders are up 60% throughout the country because people are having to make the hard choice of whether to feed their families and fill up their car with gas and heat their homes, or give up their dog. They just can't afford to care for them.
Well, first of all, I would say anyone who would abandon a dog at the border should not be allowed in this country and should be deported immediately. We don't want people like that living here at all. Second, how can Amen. It's really a sign of low character, in my opinion. So how can our viewers help? You are running an effort to save these dogs who did nothing wrong or were abandoned. How can people help?
Well, Big Dog Ranch Rescue is the largest no-kill dog rescue in the country. With our Palm Beach County location, we have 750 dogs there right now. We're overflowing, trying to rescue so many, and just opened an Alabama location. You can please come adopt one of these dogs. There's so many that needs home. Or donate. Donations keep us going. Go to our website at bdrr.org and help us save more lives.
Appreciate you doing this and for also telling us about it. Lori Simons, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tucker.
So you're not allowed to acknowledge that there are a lot of people, many, many, many thousands of people across the world who have suffered severe side effects from the COVID vaccine, which they were forced to take. We're going to speak to one woman who has, including blindness. He joins us next.
Welcome to Fox News Live. I'm Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles. 6 people are dead, 6 others wounded following a mass shooting at a Walmart in Virginia. A manager at the Walmart pulled out a gun before a routine employee meeting and began firing wildly around the break room. Police believe that some 50 people were in the store when the shooting took place. The gunman was found dead when police arrived at the scene. They are still searching for a motive. An eyewitness to the shooting at an LGBTQ club in Colorado Springs earlier this week. The suspect showed no hesitation, the man says, when he entered the club. The witness says the suspect wore body armor and began firing towards people at the bar and on the dance floor. Authorities say 5 people were killed, 17 others wounded by the gunfire. The suspect is being held without bail following an initial court appearance earlier today. I'm Trace Gallagher. See you on Fox News at night. Now back to Tucker Carlson.
There remains in place a complete media blackout on this story, but the data are clear. For many people, many of whom were forced to take the COVID vaccine, the shot has been physically dangerous. It has caused heart inflammation of many thousands of people, killed thousands of people around the world. In fact, the vaccine does not appear to do much about this version of COVID either. People who've taken the vaccine now constitute a majority of COVID deaths. In the face of these numbers, this is not speculation, it's not a conspiracy theory. These are numbers from the United States, from Israel, from the UK, from governments that keep track of it. Tony Fauci was asked about it. He denied that the vaccines are dangerous in any way, which is a lie. Watch this.
So let's just talk very briefly about what we know about the vaccines, because we want to make our decisions really based on facts, evidence, and data. Are the vaccines safe? That keeps coming up. Clearly, an extensive body of information clearly indicates that they're safe.
That's not true. Pfizer's own clinical trials show that they're not safe. More people have been injured by this vaccine, the mandatory vaccine, than by all vaccines administered in the United States over the past 30 years combined. So you never hear that, and you never hear from people who were injured. Danielle Roskowski says she was. She said she suffered very serious reactions to the Pfizer vaccine, including blindness in one eye, nerve damage, organ damage, and more. She joins us now. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on. What happened to you after you took this shot? Why did you take the shot? Were you pushed into taking it? Did you take it voluntarily? And how did your doctors respond?
Hi, Tucker. Thank you so much for having me on, and I really hope that my story can help impact others. And to answer your questions, I was not forced to take the Pfizer vaccine. I elected to take the vaccine because I thought that it was safe and effective, and I believed our nation's leaders when they told us that. But unfortunately, as you know, safe and effective is not for everyone. So since taking the Pfizer vaccine, I had over 200 tubes of blood drawn, 150 different medical appointments, everything from a sural nerve and calf biopsy to angiograms of my eyes, which proved that I had actually had blood clots in my eyes, which caused permanent vision loss. So I don't have blindness. It's very blurry, but I can still see out of my eye. Additionally, my husband and I were actually told by NYU Fertility that this has impacted our fertility and that we would probably have to freeze our embryos due to potential pregnancy complications down the line.
It's just so heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to hear this and to see that you are not allowed to say that on any other channel that I'm aware of in this country. There's a blackout on this. Your story is not welcome in public, period, which I find very upsetting. How have doctors been with you? How many doctors have been willing to concede this could be from the vaccine?
So doctors, it has been a really long path in finding adequate medical care. So when this first happened, doctors didn't really know what was going on. And a lot of them, did not say that it was the vaccine. However, the current critical care team that I do have in place does believe that it was all caused from the vaccine, especially as more information is coming out about the repercussions of the vaccines and, the 9 pages of side effects that, the Pfizer documents have kind of revealed. It's kind of a consensus now that this did happen from the vaccine. And I'm really fortunate and blessed because I was able to find a doctor, his name is Dr. Jordan Vaughn, who works specifically with the vaccine-injured community. So he was able to kind of figure out a little bit more about what was going on with me.
You have such a gentle attitude, and your kindness resonates. I don't know if I would feel that way if I were you. Those documents you refer to, the side effects from that Pfizer conceded at the very beginning, those have been available since the vaccine rolled out almost 2 years ago. Why didn't you know about them? Did you know about those side effects, potential side effects, when you took this shot?
No, I didn't know about the side effects. So when I was, waiting to take the shot, I was pretty much probably like most Americans. I don't believe that I had informed consent because I didn't know. I took the shot February, so it was quite early on because I work with students. So and having a background in teaching, I wanted to get the shot as soon as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And thank you for telling me that I had that sort of gentle and kind, attitude about me. It wasn't always the case. I was really angry after all of these side effects started happening to me. Yeah. But I wanted to take that sort of anger and channel it. Yeah.
Well, bless you for doing that. I'm so you're the injured party, not me. So I'm sorry to throw my anger on you. It's just that the fact that you can't say this in public in most places is so distressing. And I know it takes bravery to admit you've been injured by doing something they told you to do. But I know that takes bravery, so I appreciate your doing it tonight. Danielle, Godspeed.
Thank you. And so thank you so much, Tucker. If I can just say that there are a couple of really great resources out there for the vaccine injured that I wish I knew about sooner. So the Frontline Critical COVID Care Alliance, that's run by Dr. Pierre Corey, and he works with the vaccine injured as well. Additionally, react19.org and realnotrare.org are really wonderful websites for the vaccine injured community, so they can be game changers.
Thank you for telling us that. Danielle, good to see you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tucker.
So you've been told for decades now that there's no downside to affirmative action. Everybody wins. And in this country, after the Civil Rights Movement, you can't fire someone because of his skin color. What's the point of the Civil Rights Movement if you can do that? Oh, but they're doing that. And a senior government official in California was just fired, and everyone admits it because he had the wrong skin color. Does Barack Obama know this? He's against that, right? He hasn't said a word. Why is that? We'll discuss it next. A man called John Arntz has been the director of elections in the city of San Francisco for 2 decades. Before Arntz took over, elections in this city were a bad joke. People would routinely find ballot boxes floating in San Francisco Bay. So Arntz cleaned up the whole election process, and no one really denies that. But this week, San Francisco's Elections Commission fired John Arntz. Why? Well, they did it because he had the wrong skin color, and they admit it. As Elections Commission President Chris Jordonek told Arntz, quote, "Our decision wasn't about your performance, but after 20 years, we wanted to take action on the city's racial equity plan." So that's illegal. You're not allowed to fire people in the United States under federal law and state law in every state because of their skin color. And we have an entire civil rights division at the Justice Department that exists to prevent things like this from happening. And we had an entire civil rights movement designed to make sure that people were never fired because of their skin color. And yet no one's saying a word. Barack Obama, Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, our self-appointed moral superman, the NAACP, not a word. No one's paid them to complain yet. Bob Woodson experienced firsthand the civil rights movement. He's founder and president of the Woodson Center. He joins us now. Mr. Woodson, thank you so much for coming on. So if you wind up in a place where it's...
Tucker.
Well, of course, because you've just seen both ends of this. If you wind up back in a country where it's okay to say, I'm firing you because of the way you look, it kind of seems like maybe the last 60 years were for nothing.
It really does, Tucker. It's insulting and it's degrading. In fact, what progressives are doing, they have hijacked the rich legacy of the civil rights movement and using it as a bludgeon against the values of this nation, when in fact, it was those same values that enabled Black America to survive slavery and discrimination. In one sense, we are worse off now in the last 50 years than we have the first 100 years after doing Jim Crow, because the crisis facing America is one of values. It is not race.
Well, and of course, the civil rights movement was driven by and led by faithful Christians, Christian ministers. And that whole component And of course, slavery was abolished by Christian ministers. I never hear that. It's been like completely flipped on its head.
No, you really don't. And, you know, I make the case when they just denigrate the nuclear family and also Christian faith. You know, there's a test that I try to apply to people. If you are run out of gas at 10 o'clock at night in a high-crime neighborhood and the gas station is 2 blocks away, and you have the option of confronting 2 groups of people, 10 men who came around the corner and they had just left the bar, and 10 other men who came around just left Bible study. Which group would you want to confront? Even atheists don't name their children Judas. And so people instinctively know that these values are important. And when we're talking about violence and the disorganization that exists in our centers, Tucker, it doesn't exist all over. If you were to go to religious enclaves in this country, you will see that there is order, there is respect for family. You don't see drug addiction, out of wedlock births. And if you go to any Orthodox Jewish, Muslim, or Christian community like the United, and you will see these values that enabled Black America to survive slavery and discrimination still in place. But we don't focus on the value component of these communities and the fact that there are healing agents there that have the capacity to transform and redeem these communities. But what we're up against is the race grievance industry, and they have hijacked, they demonize the family, they demonize our Christian values, and that's why what the Woodson Center is doing, we are pushing back because we must de-racialize race. And these civil rights leaders are complicit in their silence. But I saw a white woman with a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on beating a black woman, pushing a baby because she was in a Trump rally. And yet the civil rights leaders were silent about that.
I know. I'm sorry to laugh. It's so grotesque. It's unbelievable. Bob Woodson, who has seen it all. Great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amir Farsood is a Canadian, lives in Ontario. Recently he found he couldn't afford to pay rent. He became homeless. That's how he considered a legitimate justification in Canada that is now considered justification for being killed by doctors, physician-assisted euthanasia. And actually, a doctor signed off on Farsood's application for, quote, medically assisted death. Fortunately, news of the story spread. Farsood raised 60 grand on a GoFundMe account and decided not to kill himself. So whether that was a scam or not, the point is a doctor signed off on killing a guy because he couldn't afford rent? A new federal law in Canada will allow euthanasia for the mentally ill beginning in March of next year. That's not a Nazi move or anything. Well, actually, it is. It's shocking. Dr. Mark Siegel joins us tonight to assess. So, Dr. Siegel, after the Second World War, there was a lot of thought put into how can we prevent the medical establishment, which has all this power, from going completely off the rails as it did in Europe in the 30s and killing weak people. And yet we seem to have forgotten all those lessons, and now we're seeing it again. What is this?
Tucker, it's not just the homeless, and you said the mentally ill. At the program north of the border, which I'm always afraid is going to spread somewhere, is medical assistance in dying. Euphemism, right? Started off in 2016, 1,000 deaths. It's 31,000 total so far, 10,000 last year alone. Thousands of physicians are participating. And by the way, Amar Farsood didn't just have a homeless problem. He's got a severe back problem. So they're labeling him severely disabled. And I'm wondering if it wasn't such long waiting lines in Canada, maybe he could have his back taken care of instead of somebody putting him on this list and him looking to end his life. And adding the mentally ill to this is even more tragic. And thank God for the GoFundMe page that a total stranger, Effie, saw this on a news broadcast and raised $60,000 to reinstitute him at home, not to help his back, by the way, and he decided against suicide. But my question, Tucker, is actually physician-assisted suicide. My question is, how many thousands out there don't have that GoFundMe page, don't have that news coverage, are waiting for this? How tragic. And the mentally ill, when you consider that both the back problem and mental health is treatable with the right kind of physician, with someone with the right attitude. Now, here's how I define being a physician: prolonging life and relieving suffering. And there's a lot of people out there that agree with me, and that might have saved the 31,000 people rather than having them go to their death. But an even higher authority, Tucker, Rabbi Beryl Bell spoke to Fox Digital, and he's up in Montreal, and he says it's our Creator who knows when to end life. Our Creator, Tucker. Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm on his side, for sure. Mark Siegel, Doctor, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Thanks, Tucker.
We're out of time. Have the best Thanksgiving. It's tomorrow. We'll be back here, in fact, doing the show tomorrow night. In the meantime, have the best evening, the best weekend with the ones you love. We'll see you soon.